Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland. In this episode, I'll be reviewing a sequential shifter from the guys at MME Motorsport. This is what I consider to be a full-size sim racing controller, which typically deliver a better experience than smaller controllers. This is the third controller solution I've reviewed from MME Motorsport, which I thought were well-executed units. Can this sequential maintain the high expectation level established by the first two? Time to put it through the SRG's review process and find out. So, let's get to it. Let's take a closer look at this MME sequential shifter. Now, this is MME SimSport, which is a kind of a spin-off department from the MME Motorsport guys. Now, MME Motorsport is a company that's been manufacturing sequential shifter solutions for gearboxes for real race cars for a while now, all the way up to F1 cars. And they do all their manufacturing in-house as far as the CNC machining, the electronics packages, designs, and implementation. So they have good quality control on all of their builds, which is good because they give you a lifetime warranty on this product. Now, the sequential shifter itself out of the box, and I'm kind of expected this, is really a nice piece. It's really nicely produced. It's made from 7075 aluminum, which is the good stuff, right? What they call aircraft grade, I believe, is a lot of people call that. So anyway, out of the box, very substantial feeling in hand. And yeah, you can tell that everything is just done quite well here. Even though it is just a sequential shifter, there's not a lot to it as far as components, but internal obviously is where all the complications for the mechanism is going to be. Now, this is pretty stout in the hand, though. It comes in at 3 pounds and 1.5 ounces, or 1.4 kilos for everybody else in the world. So it does have some heft to it. It has some blue anodized pieces here that they machine and then put together. You can see the bolts here holding things together on the bottom. And they've got some accents that they've obviously machined out here. They've inlaid some aluminum plate here. It's been laser etched, showing their logo on both sides. And they have their logo machined in up here for their MME SimSport division. So they're making full-size controls for simulation now. What else can we talk about? The shaft in here is 15 millimeters in diameter. We have a locking nut here for making adjustments on the tension. Out of the box, it's pretty stiff. But we've got some pretty decent travel here. I'd say that's about 1.5 inches, maybe 35 millimeters up here, not down here. So it feels like the kind of travel that should be on a gearbox for sequential shifting. But once it's mounted, obviously we'll be able to tell more about that and how it feels. The top part here where your knob is a nice piece here. Thick epoxy on top of this for the finish, and then they polish it all out. You can see the carbon fiber inlay inside of that. I don't know how well this is going to convey on video, but it has this nice three-dimensional look to it when you move it around in the lights. So again, we wouldn't expect anything less from a product at this price point. There are mounting holes on the bottom here. We have 4, and they are M6 bolts, and they do include the bolts in there. We'll look at that in a minute when we look at the mounting plate. So we'll be mounting it like this. This will be the back of the shifter towards me. This will be the front towards the rig. We have a USB cable coming out that is about 1.5 meters long, 56 inches or so. So this should be long enough to get the job done for me. Because of my rig so big, it does take a little bit longer cord than a 3 meter, or rather a 1 meter, 3 foot cord to get to my hub or my computer. So this should do fine for me. What else can we talk about here? Yeah, it's like I said, everything is just so well done as far as the finish. All the chamfering everywhere. A lot of attention to detail here in the manufacturing process. It's just when you pull it out of the box, it feels very stout, very substantial. Something you can really bang on, I think. So let's talk about the mounting bracket that comes with this. And this does come with it. You don't have to order it extra. We have 6 countersunk holes on the top plate. Actually, this is the bottom of the plate. And on the other side, we don't have any countersunk holes. And they do give us the fasteners, and we'll take a look at that in a second. So this will go, if this is the back pointing towards me, because my USB cable is going out that way. You could go either way, just map it any way you want to in game. But I'm going to do it this way because I don't want to have the cable to have to wrap around. That would take some of the length out of it. So we'll just go ahead and use it this way. So I'll have this sitting here so that I have these holes pointing out, or not pointing out, but sticking out from the sides. That's what these perimeter holes are around here. These are access holes to bolt this to something. So we're going to bolt it on the bottom using our, let's go ahead and show you the hardware here. They give us a flat head and a socket head cap. Again, both 6 mil. There's our socket head cap. Our stainless flat head. The flat head will fit into our countersunk holes like this. So it's flat, so when we lay it down on top of something to mount it to, it doesn't interfere with anything, right? Pretty simple. And again, then we've got these bolts that are going to go through this way and go into some T-nuts. In my case, because I'm using profile, or whatever you're going to be putting it in. You might even run some different bolts that have wood screws if you're bolting it to wood or something. Depends on what you're bolting it to. So again, this will fit in here like this. I'll have the front hole sticking out the front like this. So I'll probably just use these side ones, but it's nice to have extra holes everywhere. You can never have enough holes when it comes to mounting these kind of things, because you want to get this thing mounted as securely as possible so you get all the tactile feedback that it's capable of giving you. And I think this is going to do quite well, but it's pretty stiff. But when you're slapping it and you're driving hard, that's the way I usually like my controls to be, because it's more, well, you know, there's some sequential shifters in rally cars that I've been in that were very easy to move. I mean, just tap it and it goes into gear. Obviously not so loose that a bump would cause it to go into gear, but just not as tough as this. But again, it's adjustable, and we'll talk about that. To adjust it, we have to loosen this nut. All right. And they give us this cool wrench, also out of 775 aluminum. And everything's, again, nicely done here. Even on the wrench, everything's chamfered and smooth. I mean, it's just a very smooth anodized finish everywhere. In the little piece there, I don't know if you can see that showing up in the camera edge or the lights. But yeah, a lot of attention to detail in this kit. Now, so what I'm going to do is turn this counterclockwise to loosen this nut. That's the idea anyway. That slides on like this. Let's go ahead and do that. All right. Now, when I did that, the whole shaft turned, but the whole idea here is to get this loose. Now, once I have this loose, then I turn it one way or another. If I turn it counterclockwise, it's actually backing out. You can see that it's actually backing out in the shifter itself. Now, that would make it easier. I can already feel how much easier that is to use, right? The stroke is much less force to do it. And I'm not sure how far you can go out with this. Oh, it's very light there. You probably wouldn't want it that light. But then again, everybody's a little different. But let's leave it that. Then you'll just hold the shaft, even though you don't have to, and we'll spin this down. And once that's down to where it stops, then I'll take my wrench back out, engage the slots here, and just snug it up. You probably don't have to get it too tight, I would imagine. Now it's, yeah, very, very easy to do. Again, depends on who you are and what you want. I'm going to want it, I already know, still a lot stiffer than that. So I'm just going to go ahead and loosen that again, and go ahead and spin it up so it's out of the way, all the way to the top, or the bottom rather, of the shaft. You can see the little shoulder that's on there, right? That'll stop it right below those little grooves cut in there. We'll just go ahead and spin it up like that, and then I can just spin it down with my hand. I could probably get it tight enough that I wouldn't have to use the wrench, I would think. Nah, it's still going to come loose. All right, so just go ahead and give it a snug with the wrench. Like that. Okay. Hell yeah, we're back. So from the factory, it comes at a hard setting. Because this is for simulation, and obviously at this price point, it's higher end simulation control. Yeah, I think most people are going to want some have to put some elbow grease, as we say, into it when we're shifting it. Right. Again, very easy to adjust this. So not much else to show you here as far as how it's built or anything and what we get in the kit. What we'll do next is just go ahead and get to our mounting solution. Let's take a look at how we're going to get this sequential shifter mounted. Now, they give you a bracket that you saw in the closer look to get this mounted to something. Depends on what you're going to be mounting it to. And it's a nice anodized piece. We have some nice chamfering everywhere. Just like everything else here, it's just really well done. And what we're going to do is orient it so I have these front holes towards the front or pointing to the front of my cockpit. Now this is a sequential shifter. You use it this way. Now you could use it the other way because it is a sequential, depending on what you need to do. I'm going to use it this way because the cable comes out at this end. And of course, this gives me a little bit more reach, about 4 inches or so. And if I had done it this way, I'd have to bring the cable back around. Plus, I believe they would like you to orient it this way. Anyway, that's the way I'm going to get it set up. And there are 6 holes, again, the countersunk holes. And they have a certain pattern here that lines up on this. If I turned it this way, the holes would line up here, right? Well, you guys can see that. Very slippery stuff here. So that would mean the holes that I really want to towards the front would be sticking out of the front there, which is, you could do it that way. I mean, it depends on your own mounting situation. But I am just going to mount it so I have the holes pointing this way towards the front of the cockpit. So there's 6 of them because the pattern's a little different, and they give you enough holes there to get it lined up, and you can accomplish what you need to. Let's go ahead and get this bracket mounted. What I'm going to do is use these flathead screws that come with your kit, stainless steel units. And of course, they're going to go in the countersunk holes. Now, what I'm going to do is preload this, and this is a 4mm wrench size on top of this. I have a 4mm wrench here. And I'm just going to, again, check and make sure that my countersunk holes are going to line up like I want them to, with the holes extending past the casing on this shifter. And they do. Just preloaded in that countersunk hole there. And I'll look straight down here and hold up the sequential shifter and just get that started. And one thing I noticed about the assemblies is the machining is done quite well here. And you can let this slide down a little bit. It'll just rotate on the bracket and everything will just sit there nice and stable. It won't get away from you. The threads are cut well here. All the holes line up perfectly. Just very good machining here. And again, I would expect this from the guys who are making this because they've been doing this kind of thing for a long time as far as CNC manufacturing. I'm just going to give a little bit of snug there. And if you look at these holes here, this is what I'm talking about. They are perfectly centered. Now, well, it's going to show up in the video there, but they are. So I don't even have to worry about it. These things are going in. I don't have to leave it all shaky loose because I have to jiggle it around as I'm putting the screw in. These guys are just going straight in, just as easy as that. It's the little things like this that I notice when I'm working with a product. And again, sometimes you have to chase the threads with a tap because they've got anodization or powder coating in them left in the manufacturing process, things like that. Like I said, it's the little details that I notice. And I relay those to you. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down pretty good because it'll be the final tighten. All right, so there we have it. I've got my holes where I want them. And the cable's oriented the way I want it to be because I'll be using it like this. Right? Now, how am I going to get it mounted to the cockpit? Well, I have a profile cockpit, as some of you may know. And I'm going to use this 4080 piece of profile here as a demonstration piece. And this is the way I'll typically mount all of my shifters, handbrakes, and things like that. And that is using a small piece of profile. This one's only about 5 or 6 inches long. So it depends on what your needs are, obviously. So this is my universal go-to setup, if you will. So I'll just put this here. Now, one thing I want to show you here is there are tabs on the bottom of these brackets. And if you're experienced with profile, you know what I'm talking about here if you have these type of brackets. Those tabs are on this side and this side from the factory. You have to take a couple of those tabs off, though, to allow this bracket to sit flush with the side of the profile. If you don't do that, it's just going to be sitting up and wobbly and just won't work really well. So that's why I leave the tabs there, because it sits in the channel, as you can see, and the anti-rotation brackets keep things from rotating. They're doing their job. But it does create a possibility of some rotation or flex because we don't have the tabs in here. And there's a way to get around that, and that is to put another piece of corner bracket or another corner bracket right under here, either side, doesn't matter, and go ahead and do the same thing. Tighten it down. You'll leave tabs on one side, and on the side that's mating against this profile, you will take the tabs off, obviously, or it won't fit flush. Tighten that down, tighten these down, and you're good to go. It's not going anywhere. about as stiff as you can get as far as mounting something to a profile cockpit. So we got 2 of these we're going to use. Now, the only problem with this setup is, the way I have these brackets, is they're going to hit each other. So I'm not going to get them close enough. Right. And I also want to mention that if I'm going to permanently mount a shifter or handbrake or something to this, or at least it's going to be there a while, which never happens at the SRG because I'm always moving things around, I would put another corner bracket under each one of these pieces of profile, again, because of there's no anti-torque or anti-twist tabs in here. See? Not there. Right. So, and you can see I got some peanuts in this channel here from mounting other things in different orientations. So that's why I would put one there anyway if I was going to have something mounted there for a long time. Now, again, the distance limitations of the corner brackets bumping into each other, and this bracket, we're going to set it on top, see where it lines up. As you can see, the front holes here, well, if I can keep it from sliding around on me, the front holes here will fit, or I can go back and get the back holes, but I can't get them both. See how short that is up front here? So what do? Well, what you do is you take one of these off, and I take one of these M6s out, and I'll just slide this thing out. So we can get my T-nut off so we can explain a little better what's going on here. So then I would take this piece of profile and I can get that close to the other piece, right? So now I'll test fit, put this up here, and I can see right away just by looking straight down that now I can get that in there. See how much space I have in here on this profile? Obviously it's not enough space to get this corner bracket in there. We already saw that. So this is what I want. But now I've taken a corner bracket off, so I've reduced the stiffness or the sturdiness of this mount. So what do? Well, in this case, I would just take this and mount it this way. Again, the tabs would go along the channel on the bottom here, and the flat piece would go up against the side of the profile. Just like I was talking about, you could do anyway, even if you already had the 4 already oriented in here, and yeah, you could do that to help, again, keep it from twisting. So I would just set this in here like this with a T-nut, obviously, and a bolt. Put it up against the profile, and now I've really stiffened this up again, right? Not only that, but I've added an anti-twist factor to it by default. So that's how I am going to mount this. One bracket will be this side. And it could be the inside, outside, depends on your configuration or however you want to do it. So that pretty much explains what we're doing here as far as getting this mounted. So now what I'm going to do is take it and get this secured over on my rig. When we come back, we'll take a look at how that went. Here's the MME Sequential securely mounted to our racing cockpit. And you can see it went just like you saw when we were over at the bench in the first segment of this mounting sequence. And it's securely attached to the mounting element of the P1X cockpit. Again, the 2 pieces of profile are secured to the top part. And again, the corner bracket I had to pull out is now located right in there. And I used the existing M6 bolts that were in the kit and my own M6 peanuts to get that secured. You have both sides there. And now everything is very secure. I don't know how well this is going to convey on the video, but it feels really good. And it also gives you a good feel of the tactile feedback you're going to get from this shifter once you have it securely mounted like this. On the bench, when I was testing it, trying to hold it down with one hand, really that's not a good indication of what it's going to feel like. It feels very solid, as you might imagine. I'm going to have to get in and start driving it before I can really make any comments on what I think as far as the tactile feedback when I'm actually making shifts and I'm driving a car. So there it is, securely mounted, and we'll just go ahead and get to the next segment. MME Motorsport sent me both the sequential shifter and the handbrake at the same time. So at this point of their individual reviews, I'm going to introduce the multi-bracket, or the bracket that you'll be using to attach them in tandem, if you want to do it that way. Totally up to you. So you'll see this part of the review, or this segment, in both of those reviews because it really just overlaps and relates. Now, if you saw a closer look in both of these reviews, you saw this bracket that they sent me. Now, if you order the handbrake and the sequential, they'll send you this bracket. I'm not sure if they send you this bracket too that comes with the individual ones. I would imagine they would, just in case you want to do something different later on. But this is their multi side-by-side tandem mount. So what we have here is a pattern for the handbrake, and you see it says HB over there. Get the light. And over here, it says right hand and then sequential. So if you drive on the right hand of the road and your driving position or your actual steering wheel is on the left side of the car, this is what you'll be using. Now, if you drive on the left side of the road, just flip it this way and the orientation changes. Now, how we're going to mount it to profile is going to be these 4 holes here, because the rest of these holes are going to be attaching to the bottom of our controls. So pretty simple so far. Now, there is an issue with profile mounting. Not really an issue, but it's something that, you know, I like to show you guys everything so you can make as informed a decision as possible on whether these solutions will work for you. So if I took these 4 holes here and mounted it to a profile, and this is how I would mount it, directly like that. Obviously, this is straight up and down on a piece of profile, 40/80, which is how I'll be mounting it. So I ran into an issue here in test fitting this. I'll show you what it is. I'm a little surprised that I did run into this issue. First off, I'm going to use T-nuts, obviously, in the channels. And the T-nuts have a shape to them. We have the hole on one side, and on the other side it's all solid, but that's also where they put the spring ball part of our spring ball T-nut, right? I'm going to go ahead and put this in here, in the middle. These end holes here, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go ahead and roll this down real quick and show you what's going on. It's going quick enough. All right. Now what I'm going to do is orient this on the short, or as much as I can, with the long piece going this way and the short one going this way, because I'm worried about bumping into my hole down there for the other T-nut. How close that is already. I'm just going to hand tighten or finger tighten this so it doesn't move. Then I'm going to hold up another T-nut that I would be using on another bolt going through the other side, right? So if I put that and bump it into the other T-nut, flip it around, I got a problem. See that? It's not lining up with the hole. So this is the first thing since dealing with the MME Motorsport equipment that I've run into an issue. So you can mount it to something else if you weren't using T-nuts, right? But that's not going to work there, so that means only 3 of these I could get in here. Or there's other ways around it. I'll show you what I mean. But it takes away some of the versatility of my roll-in T-nuts. Sometimes you have to suffer, right? This is another type of T-nut here. One has a piece of metal on it. See if I can push that down out of the way. Yeah, okay. That's from the manufacturing press. The little burr was sticking up. Yeah, I pushed it down. I'll go ahead and hit that with a file or something and knock it off before I actually install it. So, back to what we were talking about. This may be able to line up. You see how thin it is on both sides of that hole? If I hold that here, I really don't need the bolt to demonstrate this, I think. Now we can see that I have a hole that works. See that? So I can get my M6 bolt in there. But it's bumping up against that, which is not the problem. Or it's really not a problem. It's just something you have to do. Now, because this is a twist in, but there's no way for me to get this to drop in like I normally would use a twist in type of T-nut, because if I do it this way, so they just drop in, this would slide in and this would slide in, or I could just put this one in and then put this one in and then get my bolts. I can drop this in, but I'll have to turn it this way in the channel and try to get my bolt in that way, which could be a bit precarious, or I could loosen up all the T-nuts and just slide them into the profile. But that kind of takes away from the benefit of having the spring ball nuts. So if I slide this in here like this, I could pre-install this and slide it in also, because it'll fit in the channel like this. That's the way these work. Once you tighten them down, they're supposed to spin into it. Or I can do it this way, which I'm probably going to try first just to see if it works. And just kind of slide this in here and push it in to where I'm kind of looking down here, and I'm going to turn it, or use something that's not magnetized. Because I'm trying to turn it with that, it's not working out too well. Anyway, I'm going to turn it, get it to turn. If I can, once it bumps up against that other T-nut. So anyway, it's kind of fiddly if you're going to do it this way. All right, let me try to pull this back and just turn it anyway. Oh, there is a burr on here, so that might be inhibiting me a little bit here. If I can get it to turn. There we go. But you can see, yeah, not the most graceful solution here, is it? I'm doing all this. Now that I have it sideways, I can actually push this in here carefully, and I'm going to push on this side of the channel so it won't twist back around on me. And I'll just keep pushing it in there until I can see the hole, which I can. Easy, right? So I can still do the drop in and get this to work. Just like that. And of course, the other holes in this bracket, there's no issue, right? These are going to be fine. Plenty of room for T-nuts on those. So this is how I'm going to get around it, because I would like to have as many of the bolts in here as I possibly can. But I would like to see the guys at MME Motorsport make that spacing a little bit wider between these two holes. In fact, I'm not sure why they had it this way. I'm sure they were thinking of something on their end. But yeah, I like to see more spacing so I could just use regular T-nuts, wrench out of the way, in all 4 of these holes. But I can still get it done, as you can see. So there's a will, there's a way kind of thing, right? Now, if I loosen both of these up, of course, it will slide back out. And I could have slid it in to begin with the other 2 T-nuts in these holes too. And yeah, probably would have been a little bit, I don't know, it would have been either way. I guess it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. But yeah, that's how we would end up with it. And a T-nut up here and another one down here, and we're done. And that's how I'm going to do it. Right, so let me take these off. Now that we've done that, found out what our issue is for me when mounting it to profile. Again, I'm going to recommend to them that they widen those holes a bit. I don't know, another, 5 to 10 millimeters would do the trick easy. No big deal. Right. Get you back out of the way. So now we're going to be mounting the handbrake and the sequential. Very simple stuff here. Well, kind of simple. I figured I would mount the sequential first. And if you notice the handbrake, I like the way they did this. They have this at an angle. So the shifter will be here, and then we'll have the handbrake sitting off at an angle that you're reaching out past the shifter, or on the other side of the shifter at a good angle to pull it back to you. More ergonomic. I like that they thought that through. So yeah, no complaints about that part. So what I'll do is go ahead and just start putting this together and see how we go. Now remember, I'm going to be using the M6 bolts that they include in both of these kits. So we got 4 that came with sequential. We got 4 that came with the handbrake, and you use those. But again, you're going to have to source your own hardware for the holes for mounting to the profile or whatever it is that you're mounting to. So I'm just going to put this in here, and these are 5 millimeters. They're M6 bolts, but they're 5 millimeter socket head cap units. And I have a 5 millimeter wrench here that I'll be using. And I'll just look straight down here while it's sitting sideways, and hopefully high enough. Or is it? Okay. Going in well enough there. Again, the assembly of all this, as far as their components so far, has been very, very easy. I mean, everything just goes in so nicely. They do a good job with this. And once this is in, as I pointed out in the single mount, you don't have to tighten it down much. But once this is in, these holes, there's no jiggling in this bracket. These holes are just lined up. I mean, they're dead on. And the reason I mention that is because there's plenty of times when I've not had that situation where I had to leave the bracket real loose, sloppy loose even, to get the bolt started, and then you run them all in together. And yeah, it's just one of those things that you go, well, this wasn't really precision CNC machine, was it? But this one was. And we'll see if the same relates to the brake once we get that on, but I kind of think it will. I'll go ahead and give these a final tighten before I mount them with a regular 5 millimeter that looks like this, although this is a 6 millimeter. All right, so we've got that one on. Now we need 4 more of these 6 millimeter socket head caps. And I'm going to mount it like this. I'm sure that's the way they intended, with these pieces here pointing towards me or towards the driver. I'm going to go ahead and now lay this down, and we'll preload one of our M6 bolts and just put on the wrench, put it through the hole. I'll bring up the component and start my screwing in sequence. We'll go this one first. Again, very easy to go in. I come over here and grab this one cross panel from it, or cross away from it, as far as the pattern is concerned. And we'll go ahead and get these in. And we'll go ahead and get the other two in. And the holes, again, should be lining directly up. And look at that. No worries. No playing around here. Just get it done. Look at that. I appreciate the little things. And when I have a little trouble, I also like to point that out. Like with these holes here. Just a little bit wider. Yeah, everything would work great. All right, so now we got these. Again, I'm going to do a final torque on them before I get it installed. But this is how it's going to look. So my sequential shifter is like this. And of course, I'll be close to me like this, and I'll be pulling on it, right? And then I can reach over here and grab my handbrake and pull it. So it's going to be a very ergonomic angle there. I really like the way they thought this through and didn't just put it side by side. I've had other shifters with handbrake combos from companies come in, and it was just a side-by-side straight orientation. This, and I always like to do this with all of my handbrakes, and some of the other ones that I've used, like my hydraulic one, I've done the same thing. I mounted at an angle, and it's just a little bit easier, more ergonomic to pull it to you that way. So there you go. Now we have the unit all assembled. Now what we'll do is go ahead and put our T-nuts in. I'll slide this thing into our profile that's over on my rig for shifting duties, and we'll come back and see how that looks. All right, so now we have the MME Motorsport sequential and handbrake securely mounted with their double or tandem side-by-side bracket. I was able to get all 4 bolts in, our M6 bolts, with the T-nuts. I did have to, surprisingly, use another one of these T-nuts, because, and I'm going to show you a shot of it here. The middle ones we got sorted with this type of T-nut and a regular spring ball, but then the spring ball interfered with the nut, or rather, not the other nut going in to support the other bolt. And again, you can see that in the picture. So again, maybe if they made the bracket, 10 millimeters wider on each side, just 20 more millimeters, and change the spacing on the bolts, I think that would sort this out where you could just use regular spring ball T-nuts on all 4 holes. That's up to them to do. We did get the job done, and remember, they don't give you any fastening hardware for this bracket, so you're up to your own devices to get it mounted. So there it is. All right, now I do like the angle that the handbrake is sitting at. It makes it very ergonomic when pulling this handbrake when you're sitting over here in the seat. I've already been testing it, and it's a very solid mount, by the way. And you can see, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get you guys to see what I'm doing here. The sequential is very stiff. As far as the pressure goes, you can make it less, obviously, but I like it right where it's at. You can smack it, and it feels really stiff. So it gives you a lot of tactile feedback when you're smacking this thing around and using it while you're driving. The handbrake, oh, by the way, it is noisy, though, as you can hear. It's not quite a sequential shifter. But when you get to full-size controls, a lot of times this is what you're going to get. You're going to get a louder control. And this is definitely going to be loud. So be advised. And this one over here, the handbrake, is quiet. Again, I like the way this handbrake feels, but we're going to have to wait and see how precise I can get as far as my braking when I'm using it, and see how that feels when you're driving the car. But yeah, it looks like it's going to work. And it does have just a little bit of a notch there when we turn it, but not much. All right, so we finally got this mounted, and the seat, by the way, you can see how close that is. I had to loosen up my corner brackets down here that hold my seat rail and slide them towards the left to get that to work. Where's the other one? There it is. But that's the beauty of profile, right? We can just move it over a few millimeters and make things work. That's when I really like profile cockpits. Right, so everything's mounted. It's a little bit before, depending on how you're looking at it, or after the wheel rim as far as the plane. And that's typically where I like mine. Everybody's a little different when it comes to this stuff. So yeah, whatever makes you feel comfortable in longer stints, then that's what I recommend you do. But this is where I ended up with it. So we got everything securely mounted now. We were successful. Now it's time to get in and have some fun in the driving segment. Now let's take a look inside of this MME Motorsport or SimSport sequential shifter. Now before I take anything apart here at the SRG for our look inside segments, I'm always considering what's going on, and I try to get some outside cues to determine how I'm going to approach getting inside the case. So instead of just taking all the bolts out and ripping things apart. So it might save you some time when it's going back together. And I know that this is under spring pressure, right? So we got some tension in here. And that's probably some kind of a cam assembly or shape in here with some kind of a bearing rolling in it. I don't know till we get inside. But because there's pressure on it, I want to pay attention to that. Now remember, we have this piece here and we can relieve the pressure on it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it where it is. And I think I can get it done without having to worry about that. The electronics package is probably going to be in this half of the casement because that's where the cable's going in. So we've got 4 bolts on the bottom. Now either that's holding a piece of metal that's part of the assembly inside of here so it helps support everything. I'm sure that's happening. But there's also probably some electronics package in here that's part of that deal or the whole assembly. I want to leave it in there intact. So I'm going to pull this half off. Even though I've got bolts on the side here, typically I'd want to pull this off, but because the USB cable's there, I'm just going to try to pull this one off. So we've got a total of 6 socket head caps we're going to be pulling out of here. These are 3mm hex heads on these socket head caps, same on the bottom, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull this thing apart and see what's going on. First I'm going to pull the bolts out, make some noise here. All right, so anytime I'm pulling bolts out of the casements like this, when I pull them out, I want to look at the lengths of them. So I'm going to pull these 2 out, look at them, and they are the same length. I want to make sure there's no different lengths on the bolts. And if there is a difference, then I'm going to make sure I remember which hole it went in, because you don't want to put a longer bolt in there that's just a little bit longer than the one you took out of that same hole. And then you're trying to tighten it back up when you put it back together. Next thing you know, you're stripping it out because you're trying to get it down further than it will ever go. So yeah, it keeps you out of trouble. So these are the same length. I'm going to put these in the tray, and they have a very long shank on it, as you can see there. Very solid piece there. So we'll go ahead and put that out. We'll take these 2 out, and again, I'm looking at the length, and they are the same. Good. So they're all the same. We got those out. Now we're going to flip this around. I can feel this is still tight. Casement's not coming loose at all. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these guys out and leave those in, like I said before, right? So we're going to leave the bottom ones in and take the top ones out. Very carefully so we don't strip anything. I'm trying not to mar the beautiful finish. Okay, those were easy. That means they're short. They went quick. Pull these out, and they are short, and they are the same length. So that's what we're looking at for those. Stainless steel units, we can tell because this is a magnetic dish and they're not sticking very well. So now all we have to do is take it apart, right? And what I'm going to do is kind of grab both sections here. And I wear these gloves because they're very grippy, grippier than my fingers are. So yeah, it's easier to do it with that. I'm just going to kind of wiggle them back and forth as I'm pulling them apart and see how that goes. So let's go ahead and set it down there. There we go. It's coming right off. It does have a good friction fit. There we go. Put that down. I can see a bearing came off. And we'll look at that in a second. So this is 7075 aluminum, just like all the construction here on the MME sim racing controllers that I've seen so far. And yeah, we have a shielded bearing here. It's acting as a pivot for the shaft over there. Probably one on the other side, I would imagine, sitting on this side of the casement. So I'm going to pull that off and just put it back in where it came out of. You can see they machined an indentation there so that these bearings will fit in. Like that. Nice tight fit. Not too tight though. All right. Anything we want to see about it? Yeah, we got a little stud here. See how they machined that and left a lot of a cone shape here? So it gives that stud a lot more strength than if they just left the stud alone coming out like this. But you can see this spacer here is very, very thick. So they compensated for that too. The engineering that's gone into this is very sound, it looks like to me. We've got a groove in here. Where's my little pointer here? We've got a little groove inside of here underneath this part that sits on the outside. And this is capturing this part of the shaft, or rather the lever assembly, not the shaft. The shaft's sitting on top. And yeah, Anodized throughout, very nicely done. Again, it's the same theme with any of the components that I've gotten from MME so far. Now we can take a look at what's going on in here. And I was right about the USB. You can see it. There's the PCB sitting there. And we have our cables coming in here. The usual suspects here, the red, black for our power, positive and negative, and of course our white and green data USB cables. And I'm not going to take this completely apart because it is under spring pressure. See that spring sitting in there? That's providing tension on the shifter, and it's sitting up in here, pushing up against this housing. So I could take that out, but I'd have to then I'd have to figure out a way to compress it back together as I'm putting it back in. Now we can relieve the tension on this spring. Remember, we have this wrench here, and this thing, I wonder if I can, do that by hand. So I can actually spin this up. And as I'm doing that, it's a good way to see how we adjust the tension also. This comes up. So that's going to relieve tension on that spring sitting inside this lever assembly. Go glare the lights there, but I think you can see it pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and see how much tension I can take off of this because I want to move it back and forth and show you guys what's going on. So I'm going to try to relieve some tension here so it's not so hard to do. There we go. That's what I wanted. All right. Yes. Okay. And of course, the spring is now longer in here inside of the little piece they've left machined out to capture it. You can see I got some threads showing here. Now, if I was doing this, and if you saw in the closer or the adjustments, then I would just take this, hold this, and screw this one back down off of here. There we go, like that. All right, so it would stay where it's at. All right, now, how does this work? Well, we've got a piece of aluminum riding in here in this channel. Let's get this around here. You can see it better here. It's a little block inside of there. See it block down in there? All right, so the block is being captured by a shaft that's going through here that's holding the other set of shielded bearings. We have one here, and you can see they put a little lock clip on this one so it doesn't go anywhere. Just a little extra insurance that it won't go anywhere. So when I move this, like this, if I can get it to move, there we go. Then a couple things are happening here. You can see the indentation that was machined into the bottom 70-75 piece of aluminum, and you can see how that bearing rides out of that indentation up on this. So there's kind of a cam profile in here, right? So either way I go, it's the same thing's going to happen. Now as we move it, this rides up on this, the spring compresses, and we have these ball bearing pieces here that are stopping it. See, that kind of acts like a stop there. And those are spring loaded also, because you can see how flat they get when you're actually compressing them. So that gives us that sensation that we're moving something or feel like we're moving the selector shaft that's on a sequential transmission or gearbox. So everything, again, very well done here as far as the machining. Everything is very good as far as the fit and finish in here. The board, again, I'm not going to take it completely apart. The board is going to be a magnetic sensor in there. Let me see if I can see if this does anything when it goes over here. Okay, so there's a Hall sensor inside of here, and there's a magnet on the bottom down here. Well, the well that's going to show up. Let me let it go. There you see that piece of metal hanging down there. See that? So that has a magnet in it, and it will sense when it moves, just like all Hall sensors work. The magnetic field decreases, and it knows something's happening, and it sends the signal to the board to be converted to a signal that our computer can understand. So very nice. Yeah, just like all the rest of the stuff that I've reviewed so far from MME, they really do a professional job here. As you guys can see, there's really, I don't know what I can complain about here, except maybe if you don't like blue. Everything else is just done so well and thought out well too. Just good execution. So yeah, that's how it's working. That's how we get the sensation of pushing that selector rod. Of course, I had mine as tight as I could get it because I just use a lot of force when I'm using things. And you'll see that in the driving segment if you haven't seen it already. I like to slap things around a little bit, so I tension them down as much as I can. But yeah, I like what I see here. I don't think anybody can complain too much. There is a cable-gable assembly here where this is a set screw going down, and there's another piece of metal, I believe. I'm not sure if there's another piece of metal in there. There might be something in there, a piece of plastic underneath of this, or some kind of a nylon bushing that when we tighten that set screw in there, it clamps down on the cable, so it's a stress relief, so you can't pull the cable out. yeah, so other than that, the PCB is R1, so it's got some labeling on here, obviously, but it's all their own stuff. In fact, you can see a little bit of the logo under there. It says MME Motorsport. Yeah, so I guess that's about it. Yeah, I like what I'm seeing here. I don't know about you guys. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get everything put back together and get on to the next segment. We're in iRacing at Sebring, and we are in the Commodore Super V8 car. A proper setup, I think, for testing out a sequential shifter. First thing I guess I could say about this shifter is tactile feedback is very good. It feels very solid underhand. As you might imagine, if you saw the look inside and you saw how this thing is constructed from 70-75 aluminum throughout, yeah, you can feel it in the shifter when you're using it. And of course, you do need to have it mounted securely to something to get that feel out of it. If you have some flex in your mount, you're not going to get the same feel out of it. But that goes with any shifter. So when you're shifting it, if you saw the look inside, you know we have a roller bearing in there that's riding out of a notch cut in the bottom plate that's acting like a cam profile. So it comes out of it, compresses the spring up in the lever shaft, and then hits the stop. And the stop consists of the two ball bearings that are spring actuated embedded on either end for the stops. So what we're getting is a metal-to-metal stop, but it doesn't feel like a real harsh stop because we have that little bit of spring compressing as we come to the stop. Even when I'm banging on it hard like this, it doesn't feel, I guess a good word is, use an aluminum baseball bat and you hit a baseball with it. Sometimes you get that weird vibration. It doesn't feel right. Well, that takes care of that. So it's a design element here that was a wise move on their part, I think. Now, some sequential shifters, you'll find urethane, you'll find rubber, and all kinds of materials in there for the stop. And they have their own characteristic feel. Whether you like those or not compared to something like this, again, nobody will know unless you try it yourself. I did like it. It made just everything feel very tactile, and it made it feel repeatable. So every time I slammed it either way, it just felt the same. And that's a big thing, I think, on shifters. You're trying to get the consistent feel out of them, so it becomes you're not even thinking about it anymore. You're just using it. And you're using it exactly the way you need to. Then again, we're not doing anything crazy here. We're just pushing it forward and pulling it backwards. But still, the feel that you get out of that is something that, if it's not right, it's just not very comfortable. And if you've ever had one that was right and then went back to something, maybe a lower end sequential shifter, you'd feel the difference right away and you would notice it. So yeah, no complaints on the feel here. And of course, having it mounted very solidly to your rig is also very important to get that feel out of it. Now you see I'm over in the rally car and I have it teamed up with the handbrake like I did before, but now I'm actually using the handbrake. I like this setup with the handbrake. If this was my only sequential shifter and handbrake setup, I think I could be pretty happy with it. The handbrake is very good, but I did another review on that one. You can go look at that. But the shifter just does a good job. It's very consistent, like I said before. And that's the secret, I think. You know, being consistent so that you're not even aware of what's going on when you're driving in anger. And you're in competition, you got cars all around you. Last thing you want to think of, oh my God, did I miss that shift because, you know, you felt something soft going on in the shifter. It just doesn't, it's not consistent in the feel. And I found a lot of the urethane or rubber bumper types can feel that way after using them for a while. This doesn't do that. And again, it's not too harsh either. So I think they found a good balance here. They must have done a few different design iterations here to come up with this, because it's the first time I've seen that in a sequential shifter. And the fact that we're really pounding on this thing on the downshifts, and I haven't seen anything fail or show any weakness anywhere. I think they've done a good job with this. And this is what I would consider one of the top tier sequential shifters, considering the price range it comes in at. So it should be delivering this. The expectations are already set by the price point. And I think that they're delivering it here with the consistency you get out of this particular shifter. I think it's going to be a strong shifter for a long time because of the mechanicals in it. And again, go back and look at the look inside segment if you want to see how it's all working. And if you haven't, and you can make up your own mind. But, you know, the materials that they use in this shifter, you can feel the difference as like a lower end shifter right away underhand here when you're actually slamming it around. So again, it's just one of those things you have to use for yourself to figure it out. But I had a hard time while I was doing this review trying to find something negative to say about the design, the implementation, or how it was executed. They've just done a pretty good job here with this thing. And it seems to me that it's going to be a long life cycle on this shifter because of the hall sensor and things like that built into it. Of course, you never know. Anything can fail at any time. I mean, we are racing, right? So, yeah, overall, I don't have any complaints about the shifter. It does a good job. It's consistent. Really, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And having a full-size control like this one is also gives you a little bit more immersion than if we had like a little short one on there and we're just kind of manipulating it with our wrist, not really throwing it that far back and forth. But then again, it depends on what you want and what you can afford and what price point you're looking at to get in a sequential shifter. But I don't think you'll be disappointed if you get this one. Final thoughts on the sequential shifter from the guys at MME Motorsports. Out of the box, this shifter presents as a professionally finished sim racing controller. Fit and finish are very good and consistent throughout the assembly. All machine parts are made from 7075 aluminum, second only to 7078 aluminum when it comes to a stiffness rating. This results in a very solid feeling unit in hand and in use, as long as your mounting solution is up to the task. It has a brushed anodized finish on the casement in blue and a matte silver on the lever pieces. This coating is also applied on the internal shifter components. It comes with a carbon fiber shifting knob that has a thick clear coat finish. The shifter has an adjustable tension feature that allows you to dial in your preferred tension and lock it into place with the provided aluminum wrench. This shifter comes with a 5mm thick aluminum mounting plate that will provide a good stiff platform to mount this unit. MME also offers a tandem mount that allows you to mount their handbrake alongside the shifter at an angle that gives you a more ergonomic reach. This shifter uses a cam profile machined into the bottom aluminum piece that provides a good notch feel when using the shifter as the shielded bearings ride in and out of this profile. The lever stop is provided by a pair of spring tension ball bearings. The entire assembly pivots on two more shielded bearings sitting on either side of the lever's pivot point. The cam profile aluminum plate is also used to support the custom circuit board developed in-house at MME. This board uses a Hall effect sensor style setup, which usually results in longer life cycles than a direct contact solution. In use, the shifter offered good tactile feedback using my mounting solution. The feel remained consistent during my driving sessions. You do get a good sense of manipulating a Sequential's gearbox selector shaft, but not as mechanical feeling as the real thing. But most sequentials used in racing cars these days are shifted using pneumatic actuators on their mechanical linkages, so the driver only feels what the shifter unit's internals are designed to deliver. Overall, this is a very solid shifter that took my harder than average shifts without showing any signs of stress, a result of the shifter's design, materials used, and manufacturing processes. MME has positioned this shifter at the higher end of available full-size sequential shifters, and expectations are set accordingly. I struggled to find any real things to complain about with this shifter. It got the job done in a solid, consistent manner and never displayed any signs of weakness, which is really what matters, I think, when it comes to using full-size sim racing controllers. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.